Height of the light. We've talked about the direction of light 360 degrees around the subject, but you can't forget about the height of the light. The height of the light, or the direction of light up and down, is another way to introduce more or less shadow into the shot. And there isn't a right or wrong placement of the light, but you really need to know how it affects the look of your subject and the look of your image. The higher you raise up the light above the plane of the face, the more shadow you're going to introduce. Now, a benefit of raising your light up is you begin to sculpt out the cheekbones and the jawline. You add dimensionality to the photo, but at some point when you raise the light up too high, you skull out your subject. In other words, they get deep dark shadows in the eyes, they lose their catch lights, they look like a skull. And it's all a balance, because I can create more shadow for mood and more sculpting to the face, but I don't necessarily want that sculling look. One other downside of raising up your light is that when you do so, you're adding dimensionality to the face, which is great, but you're also adding dimensionality to imperfections, like wrinkles and blemishes and bags under the eyes. So you add dimension, but you add dimension to everything. I'm going to talk more about the placement of light, the direction of light around and up and down, and how it affects the skin later on. So the lower you have the light, the flatter it is, and the higher, the more dimensional. Now when it's lower, there'll be fewer shadows, less sculpting, and just overall less shape to everything. Let's take a look at this in action. So I'm going to start with the light just a tiny bit above eye level. This low position of the light creates something that's called flat light. There really isn't much dimension to it. If you look at it, there's really no shadow underneath the nose, and the shadow underneath the chin is very minimal. If you look as well, there's not too much sculpting to the cheekbones or to the eye sockets. Mostly the shadows are minimal or eliminated. The next thing I'm going to do is take a shot and then raise that light up. And you'll see as I raise the light up, I begin to introduce more shadows and dimensionality to the scene. So let's grab this flat lit shot. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, raise that light up just a bit. And you'll see the shadows get longer and longer. You see the shadow grow underneath the neck and just a little bit underneath the eyes as well as the cheekbones. So I'll grab that shot. Okay, a little more dimensionality and shape, and I can continue going up and up and up and up. And notice when I get to this point, you see the shadows underneath her brow bone right here. Starts to introduce shadows actually to the shape of her eye. What you're always watching out for is if you want to add dimension to a shot on purpose, you're trying to make more shadows to the cheekbone or the jawline. Well, at some point when the light gets so high, you lose the light in the eyes. And so that's the balance of often what you're looking for in portrait photography. So let me take a shot at this height. Okay, still have catch lights in the eyes, still doing okay. Then raise it up one more time. Right there. So about here is where I've begun to lose my catch lights. Yep, and you take a look and now my catch lights are completely missing. But if I look at each of these shots, in the very first shot, if you take a look at it, notice how much wider the face looks because it's evenly lit across. As I raise the light up, the shadows and the cheekbones become more pronounced, more defined. And therefore, the face looks narrower and narrower and narrower as the light goes up. So one thing you could do with the subject with a wider face is actually raise that light up and it will begin to narrow it out because it defines the cheekbones and as well as the jawline. When I shoot in beauty photography, if I love the subject's jawline or I want to create a little drama with that, I don't shoot with completely flat light. I do raise the light up because that's what shows those features. So that's some of the basic things I'm considering. How much dimensionality and shape do I want to create as I raise the light up? But as I raise the light up, at some point, you get the sculling of the eyes where you actually lose the light in the eyes completely. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more later on, but what I often do is I combine this setup with some fill light below because I can still have the drama in the shape, but I don't have to lose the catch lights in the eyes or have such heavy shadows. Whether you have the light really low or really high, neither one is right or wrong. Sometimes the flat, low light gives you that kind of wash of light that makes it really glowing. Sometimes the really high dimensional light carves out features, creates more drama. That might be what you're going for. But usually, not always, but usually, You want to avoid the light being so low that it comes from below the subject or below eye level. I think that's one of the things I see early on with beginning photographers is that their main light is a little bit too low. Either they have it a little below eye level, which what it tends to do is it actually tends to make the face look a little bit wider. The shadow from the nose goes upward a bit, or they have their light source really low and it creates something called monster lighting or up lighting. It's usually what is the type of lighting used in a horror movie to show that someone's the villain. So let me show you the type of light that most of the time you want to avoid. I've seen it used sometimes successfully for creative purposes, but when you're first starting out, I would definitely put it on your don't do list. All right, so let's take a look at this. This is the really high light. Let's go down to maybe I'm gonna put it just a little bit below eye level here. And it's not terrible, okay? But it's really not sculpting the features. It actually makes the face look a little wider. So let me grab that shot first. So again, notice it's just below eye level. This is the problem I see most beginning photographers have. But let me go the opposite direction. Let's boom this light from below to illuminate our subject. And this is the monster light that I'm talking about. The defined shadows from the nose cast upward, the shadow from the lip upward, the shadows of the eyelashes upward as well. If you're first starting out, what I would probably do for a portrait where you're trying to create a flattering result is I would start with the light a little bit above eye level, and you can go higher for drama, but don't go beyond the point where you lose the catch lights. Once you understand lighting a little bit more, you can get more creative and break all of those rules, but those are safe places to begin. So we saw this in action in the studio, and typically you want something in between, very high light and very low light, just enough to flatter the features. And I find that I aim to center my light 1 to 3 feet above eye level. Now don't take this as a hard and fast rule. It depends on the shoot, it depends on if my subject's chin is raised, it depends on the distance of the light. Basically, usually what I'm trying to do is get some sculpting, but I also want a bright catch light. Now, as I do more real life shoots for you to watch, you can take a look behind the scenes. I want you to pay attention to the distance of the light, the height of the light, all of that. It varies from shoot to shoot for sure, but the differences aren't usually extremely drastic, especially for beauty and headshots. I tend to be in that 1 to 3 foot range.